Hello, class. How are you doing, everybody? So, today is the first of a long series of classes I'm going to do on entomology, or the study of insects. It's a subject that I've studied for several years. I really like it, and I thought it'd be fun to share what I know with everybody in the class. So I went through and I made my PowerPoint, and I made sure to use nothing but images that are available for public domain use. So if anybody wants to use this presentation, reuse it, show it to someone else, feel free to do it. You have my permission to use this presentation however you see fit, whether that's homeschooling or supplementary education, whatever. And you should be okay because all the images I made sure were copyright free. So that being said, this class is a very broad, today's class is a very broad introduction into the subject of entomology. It's also here to give you an idea of my teaching style, my presentation style, to see if it's something that you would like listening to. I do plan on teaching other classes like virology, the study of viruses. And I also plan on teaching, I really want to teach calculus. I know it sounds boring, but I think I can make it fun. Calculus is a form of math, and some other classes. So it's not going to be too long of a class. It's an introduction. There is a textbook available for this class, although this first presentation does not use the textbook. If you want the textbook, I will tell you where to get it. It's free. It's a PDF. So I'll see. I'm going to put my email in the chat so you guys can go ahead and email me if you want the information for the textbook. wild7trees@gmail.com. The textbook is free. It's a download. It's a PDF download. What else? I also plan on having tests for this class. So I will tell you when a test is coming up. And for that episode, the test will be in the description of the video. And then the next episode, the next class, will have the answers. So you could grade your own work. But this is going to be a college level entomology class. And I think that's about it. I spent all day looking for these images. So I'm excited. I have fun giving this class. So let's get some shout outs, everybody. We got Mr. Catfish in the room. Thank you for being here, Mr. Catfish. Melinda is here. Melinda's a biologist. Thank you for being here, Melinda. And let's see. Io Walks was in here earlier. If you're still here, buddy, thank you for being here. Mr. Catfish says maybe you could help me. And he says, I need to absolutely learn math. Okay, well, yeah, I guess we have somebody that already wants to learn some math. All right, well, that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Let's see, it's only been about 3 minutes. I don't want to dilly-dally too much. Let me pull up the presentation. I think I got everything working correctly. Okay, here we go. Perfect. All right, so this is the first class. It's an introduction to entomology. And so what we're going to cover today is a very important question. Why even study insects? Who cares about insects? Like, why are we taking this class? Why should anybody care about insects? It's a legitimate, good question to ask, and I will do my best to answer it. Secondly, let's back up a little bit. Whoa, hold on, calm down. What is an insect? This class is all about insects. Let's find out what an insect is and what an insect isn't. And then I want to talk about one of my favorite branches of biology, which is a Linnaean taxonomy. It's also named after one of my favorite biologists ever, probably top 3 scientists that I like, Linnaeus. So that's what we'll be covering. So here's just some of my favorite insects. We have a praying mantis. We have a beetle, looks like a ladybug type beetle, a butterfly or moth. And we have the eyes of some unknown insect. But as you can see, insects have a wide variety of different shapes, colors, and sizes. Let's see. We got Io Walks here. He says, I dropped out of community college and I still owe money. All right, buddy. Well, you could learn a lot about insects, and this class is free, so don't worry about that. Mr. Catfish says hopefully he's in the right place. All right, let's get started. Right. So why study entomology? All right. So yeah, I'm going to go over 2 reasons why studying entomology or insects is important. And the way I'm going to do that is by first talking about the scientific process. This is how scientists come up with discoveries, how those discoveries are spread throughout the world, and then how those discoveries are integrated into the world, and eventually they make our world a better place. And then number 2, to answer the question of why to study entomology, I'm going to describe ecosystems. What is an ecosystem? How do they work? Why are they important? What do insects have to do with ecosystems? And also, I'm going to compare an ecosystem to a restaurant. Okay, now here we have a beetle, a type of insect that I study a lot. It's a water beetle called a whirligig beetle. These beetles are found all over the world. They're aquatic beetles. They live on top of the water. They have very interesting behavior. I could go on and on about them. I've studied them a lot. This is one type of species which I actually have not studied. I don't believe so. Maybe, but this type of species is actually very small. So this little beetle would probably fit inside my pinky nail. So just a few millimeters long. So that being said, let's talk about the scientific process, and then let's talk about ecosystems. Okay, so scientific process. I've outlined some very broad steps to how the scientific process works. And before I start these steps, I just want to mention really the most important thing in this class or in the whole channel is a definition of science. What is science? Well, there's 2 components to science that you need. And so I want you to memorize these. These will definitely be on the test. So one component of science is you need repeatability. You need to be able to repeat your results or your discovery. That's why a lot of times when scientists have a discovery, they'll write a paper, and there's a section in that paper called methods. Methods is like a cookbook. The methods section carefully outlines the steps that scientist took to get the results. And another scientist should be able to do this and get the same results. You have to have repeatability. If a scientist is not able to repeat your results, then you do not have a scientific claim. As I like to say, there's nothing wrong with repeatability. Repeatability is good. The example I do is like, you want your car to start all the time. When you leave your house, you start the engine, you want the car to be able to work. You want repeatability. You don't want your car to only work 1 out of 30 times. So the first thing you need for science is repeatability. And then the second thing you need is a falsifiability. You need to be able to design a method to show that your possible conclusions are not true, that they are not correct. That's really important. I think that's the one that people overlook a lot who are not scientists. So the example I give is like your friend tells you there's an invisible dragon in my garage. And so you say, I'm going to use a scientific method to see if there really is an invisible dragon in my friend's garage. And so what you need to do is you have the claim is being made. Your friend is saying there is this invisible dragon in my garage. You need to be able to find a way to prove him wrong. You don't necessarily have to show that he's wrong, but there needs to be a way for that to be done. So what happens is you go over and you say, okay, I know he's invisible. Let's throw a blanket over him, and then that'll show the outline. Your friend says, no, you can't do that because it'll phase out of matter. It'll go into another dimension. Okay, so you can't prove him wrong there. So then you could go on and ask something else. You say, what about a thermal imaging camera? I should be able to see a thermal image. Your friend says, no, this dragon can control its heat, and so you won't be able to see it. So then you say, okay, I can't prove you wrong. So if this process keeps going on forever, then you can't prove your friend wrong. There's no way to show that his claim is false, and his claim of this invisible dragon is not falsifiable, and it's not scientific. Now, I mean, it's okay for a couple of these to come up, a lot of them to come up, a lot of these, obstacles. But the point is, eventually you have to find some way to show that it's not correct. Because if there's no way to show something's not correct, well, then anybody can say anything, really. So yeah, you need repeatability and falsifiability to have the scientific process. Okay. That being said, here's an example. Okay. A lot of times, a scientific project or the process of science will get started with a question. All kinds of questions. So here's one example. Okay, so there was a scientist. This is a real world example. There was a scientist, and he asked the question: how can we stop algae, which is a form of plant life that grows? You know, it's like a film. I'm sure you've seen algae growing. How can we stop algae from growing on the hulls of ships and submarines? Okay, so a ship and a submarine is a very large ocean-going, water-going vessel. And it turns out that if you give it enough time, a lot of this plant called an algae will grow on the outside. And this causes problems for the ships, the hulls of the ships. So the scientist came up with this question, and then he's like, okay, what are we going to do? How can we stop this algae from growing? Okay. Well, then the scientist moved on to the experiment phase. Okay, so in the experiment phase, first there's some observations that are usually made. So you have this question you're trying to answer, and you just start daydreaming. I mean, we all love to daydream. You could drink your favorite beverage or partake of whatever substance like apple juice or eat a piece of pie, whatever makes you relax, and you just start daydreaming. So this scientist, he discovered, or he thought about it, he said, you know what, sharks are really big, but sharks, they don't have any algae growing on them. Like, if you've ever seen a shark, they look so clean, they look so sleek. You know, the largest fish in the world is a shark. It's called a whale shark. But anyway, the observation was made. The scientist said, sharks are large. They live in the water. They live in the ocean. They don't have any algae growing on them. Why is that? Can we find out why a shark doesn't have algae? And can we apply that to ships and hulls, the hulls of submarines? Okay, then there was a collaboration. So not always, but in this case, in a lot of cases, a scientist will work together with another scientist who has a different set of skills. Together, they'll come up with a project. So in this case, what happened, the next thing is they decided that let's look at the skin of the shark. Let's look at it very close up with a microscope. And maybe there's an answer there. So in the bottom here, you can see that is a picture of a shark skin that's magnified. So what's happening is that in the microscope, shark skin is actually made of tiny little pieces, very little pieces that are kind of stacked next to each other. It's not smooth at all. It's actually very, very jagged. So then the scientists started thinking, okay, now we observed that the shark doesn't have algae. We've observed with a microscope that the skin of a shark is very jagged and not very smooth. So then they said to themselves, well, perhaps, what about this? What if, here's a hypothesis, possible explanation that can be tested, can be falsified, and can be repeated. They said, what if the skin is so intricate, it's so jagged and not smooth that algae cannot grow on it. Algae just cannot stick to it because it's so jagged. So they decided, let's test this hypothesis. So what the collaborator did is they made 3 different shark skins, okay? Synthetic fake shark skin. So they got one shark skin that was very smooth, unlike the real shark skin. They got one shark skin that was kind of jagged, kind of bumpy, but not really. It was an intermediate or in the middle. And then they got one shark skin that was very, very jagged, just like the shark skin. What did they do next? Well, they got these 3 shark skins and they put some bacteria on top of each one. Bacteria grows and acts a lot like algae. That's why they used it. Then they covered all these shark skins with bacteria. They put it in a special little heater that accelerates the bacteria growth. So in this example, they're going to see, does the bacteria grow on these fake shark skins? Because bacteria acts like algae. When they pulled out the shark skins, what did they find? Well, they found that the smooth shark skin had a bunch of algae growing on it. The one that was intermediate had some algae growing on it. But the fake shark skin that was almost exactly like the real shark skin, it had almost no algae growing on it. So their hypothesis was correct. It does seem like, based on their experiments, which can be repeated, that the complex nature at the microscopic level of shark skin is what prevents it from getting bacteria or from getting algae from growing on it. Now, you can see why this is very beneficial for the shark. You know, you don't want anything growing on your skin that shouldn't be there. So anyway, so then the next step in this scientific process was to publish their research. Okay, so they wrote a paper with a bunch of pictures, with the methods and introduction. And this paper summarized everything I just told you, their observations and their experiments, okay? They found a journal, which is a type of book or kind of like a magazine that scientists use to publish and share their discoveries. Now, there's all kinds of journals out there. There's journals that have to do with medicine. Some of them have to do with electricity. Some of them have to do with physics, et cetera, et cetera. Some of them have to do with fish. So they found the appropriate journal. They submitted their results, their paper, to the journal. And then other scientists had to look at it and they had to grade it pretty much. So these were peers or scientists on their same level. And they peer reviewed the paper. So these papers are not automatically published. They have to be accepted by other scientists. Now, these scientists may not like it at all. They may say, I reject your paper. It's not good science. They may say, okay, you need to do major changes and then we'll publish it. Or they may say you need to do minor changes. And very rarely they'll say you don't have to change anything. This paper is great just the way it is. Okay. So eventually this paper was accepted and it was published. Now, discoveries like this become published, and really anybody with access to a library or access to the internet can read that paper and they could find out about the discovery. And now the world knows all about this new discovery about the shark skin. So discoveries like this can be used two ways. They could be used directly or accumulatively. So sometimes the scientists will discover something, and that piece of information, perhaps it can't be used automatically for something bigger, for a big invention, but it's part of the puzzle. And so another scientist will build on it, and then they'll come up with a big discovery that can be used to benefit the world. But in the case of the shark skin, this information was actually used directly. So right from the get-go, we had the discovery, we were able to use it. So now we have this discovery is used in the medical field. Because shark skin cannot hold bacteria, there are now some instruments that are used in surgery, like a scalpel, for instance. Now, these instruments, I'm not sure if you know this, but they have to be sterilized. They have to be cleaned. They can't have any bacteria on them because when you're doing a surgery, somebody's opened up an animal or a person, and you can't introduce any bacteria because that might cause an infection. But now the handles of these instruments are made with fake shark skin, so they better help to prevent bacteria from infecting a surgery patient. So this is very clever because it's really a way to stop bacteria and infections, but it doesn't use heat. It doesn't use chemicals. It actually just uses a geometric shape. It's just a shape of an object that prevents bacteria from going on it. Now, I can think of some other applications like, I don't know how many people in the audience have gotten sick before every year, and you have to miss work or you have to miss school, and then you don't have all that much fun. Well, a lot of people get sick at work and school. What if we covered the handles of keyboards or the keyboard themselves, the surface of a keyboard, or door handles or objects that are constantly being touched by people? What if we cover that in shark skin, in fake shark skin? That could prevent a lot of sickness in the world. But that summarizes this example. So here you see that the shark, just a shark. Now, a lot of people may not like sharks. They may say, why do we have sharks? Let's get rid of the sharks. They may say sharks are dangerous to humans. Well, first of all, that's not correct. I don't think sharks kill that many people. I think humans kill more sharks than vice versa. But here we have an organism that provided us with something that we could use. So there is value in the shark. in the discoveries we can make. And insects, are very numerous animals. A lot of the animals on the world, a lot of the forms of life on this planet are insects. So surely they have discoveries as well. All right, that was the scientific process. That's the first thing I want you to understand, how animals, including insects, can be used in the scientific process. But now let's talk about ecosystems. Okay, so what is an ecosystem? Well, here in the bottom right-hand corner, we have an ecosystem. It looks like a mountain stream ecosystem. There's a lot of ecosystems out there. There's a desert, there's a rainforest, a tundra, there's a pond, ocean, ocean floor, urban. Cities have ecosystems. Really, an ecosystem is just a combination of living and non-living things. So in this photograph on the right side, you see that we have a stream, which is not alive. It's just water. You have mountains, but you have a lot of life in there. You have air as well, but you have butterflies, you have a deer, you have fish, you have a frog, you have a rabbit, and you have trees. Okay, so these all work together to make an ecosystem. It's a combination of living and non-living things. Now, that's what an ecosystem is. They're all over the place, and they're important. But why are they important? That's the question. I mean, they look nice. I can tell you right now, aesthetically, the beauty they provide is very nice. If you ever seen a beautiful beach, if you ever seen a beautiful mountain, you know that there's physical beauty in that ecosystem. So that's a value. There's recreational value as well. You could go fish, you could go skiing. Those are some of the reasons why, but there's a lot more reasons, and they go a lot deeper. But in order to explain those differences, let's talk about a restaurant first, because I think we all understand restaurants. We've all been there, and I think most of us enjoy restaurants. So on the left-hand side, we have a restaurant. We have the components of a restaurant. Okay, so what I see and what I think is going on here is you have three components of a restaurant. You have a cook, which cooks the food. At the very front, you have an owner who pays all the bills, and he keeps everything going. He manages the employee. He's got the big chef hat. And then you have a waiter, or you have the front staff. So the front staff, they open the doors for people. They make people, they take people to their table. They take the orders and they bring the food out. So there's three components to that restaurant. Now, the restaurant, it provides a service. We're going to talk about services. Ecosystems provide services. A restaurant provides a service. What is the service of a restaurant? It is delicious food. That is what they provide. So we like restaurants because we know it's a place we could go and get food that is good. Good food is not going to make us sick, by and large. That is the service. We all appreciate that service. But in order for us to get that service, we need all the different components in the restaurant. What would happen if we got rid of the cook at the restaurant? There's no more cooks in the restaurant. Well, good news, the waiter is still there. He'll still open the door and he'll still take you to your table. Good news, the owner is still there. So he's paid the bills. So there is still lights and music going on and the atmosphere is fun. Good news, the waiter's there. So he takes your order. Okay, bad news, there's no more cooks. So you can't get your food anymore. So we've left out one component of the restaurant, one part of it, and the whole system breaks down and we no longer get the service. The service is food. Let's do another example. Okay. Let's say we get rid of the waiter or the front staff. Okay. Well, you go to the restaurant, you walk in, and there's nothing going on. I mean, it's just a bunch of people sitting there. There's some activity going on, but nobody can take your money. Nobody can take your order. The system breaks down once again. You cannot get your food. And I mean, the owner, of course, like if we get rid of the owner, well, you go to the restaurant and it's not even open. There's no employees there. I mean, nobody's paid the bills. The owner doesn't manage the restaurant and you can't get the food. Okay. That's very similar to the way an ecosystem works. What I mean is that ecosystems provide us valuable services, but those services, in order for them to be provided, they need all the components to be in place. What are the components? Well, they're the living animals, including insects, including plants, including water, including amphibians. They're all important for the system to get the services. What are some services that an ecosystem like the one in the photograph provide to us? Well, do you like clean water? Do you like taking a bath with clean water? Do you like drinking clean water? Now, you may say, well, I don't drink water. I drink milk. I drink Powerade. Well, guess what? That stuff started off as water. You need clean water. Okay. How does this ecosystem provide us clean water? Well, actually, when dirty or polluted water goes through an ecosystem like a stream, it'll actually clean it for you. It'll provide you with clean water. How does this work? Well, a lot of the organisms and plants will take out the pollutants from the water. This is such a good service that plants use this. Let's say a chemical plant or a paper plant that produces wastewater, dirty chemical water. Well, what they do is when the water comes out, they'll build an ecosystem so that the water passes through the ecosystem. And as it passes through the ecosystem, it comes out cleaner and cleaner. So that's a service right there. You get clean water. A forest with a lot of trees, it also cleans the air. It makes the air better for you to breathe. How does it do that? Well, trees and plants act as a filter, okay? There's a lot of dust and garbage in the air that you don't want in your precious lungs. Well, what will happen is that dust and garbage in the air, if there's a lot of trees and plants, it'll get stuck to the leaves. So it'll be on the leaves and it won't be in the air. It'll clean the air like a filter. Then what happens? Well, then it rains. And when it rains, all that dirt and pollution goes off of the leaves and it goes into the water to be cleaned some more. So now we got clean water and we got a clean air. Those are two services. What about flooding? I live in Houston. Houston is notorious for flooding. Why do we flood so much? Why do people lose their lives due to flooding? Well, it's because the city is basically, it's just a big concrete bowl. It's a bowl of concrete. So what'll happen is it'll rain and that water has nowhere to go. It just kind of builds up on top of each other and causes a flood. But if you have an ecosystem like this with plants and roots and soil, that flood will actually be absorbed like a sponge into the ground. One more thing is there's a lot of hurricanes and fierce storms. Well, if a hurricane or fierce storm comes through and it first passes through a forest, well, the forest will take a lot of that kinetic energy before perhaps your house gets it. So these are all services, and there's a lot more that an ecosystem can provide. So the important thing is that you need to have these elements. You need to have the fish. You need to have the rabbit. You need to have the butterflies. You need to have the insects, the deer. If some of these components are taken out, then the system will break down. I mean, for instance, if you get rid of the plants, well, you get rid of a lot of the ecosystem. You don't have the pollution, helping you clean. But then also, the deer don't have anything to eat. And if the deer don't have anything to eat, then you don't have hunting or recreation for deer anymore, If you don't have plants like flowers, then you don't have pollinators like insects, like beetles, bees. And then you don't have pollination of plants. So you don't have food to eat. You don't have plant food. So I hope this explains, why insects are important to study. Number one, for the scientific process, there's so many insects. There are secrets in the insects that we could study and we could use them to benefit our world, just like sharks and their skin was used to benefit our world. Number two, it's because insects are part of the ecosystem, and the ecosystem provides us a service, multiple services. But in order to get those great services, we need to have all the workers, just like in a restaurant. In a restaurant, we need to have the front staff, we need to have the owners, and we need to have the cooks. Okay, so now that being said, this ecosystem, let me tell you a story. Actually, let me tell you a fable. I am a big fan of Aesop's fables. Fables are short, whimsical stories designed to tell you a story. They're meant to be kept simple, have a moral at the end, and they're meant to be told verbally. So if you want to retell this story, feel free. I came up with this story myself, but I hope it illustrates why ecosystems are important. So let's get started with that. All right, so I like to call this fable the dewberry and the coyote. So here in Texas, these are Texas organisms. So you have a dewberry, which is a very delicious wild berry that grows here. And then you have a coyote, which is a form of wild dog that lives in packs and has a very distinctive howl or vocalization. All right, so what happened with the dewberry and the coyote? Well, one time, a long time ago, deep in the forest, there was the most amazing berry ever. And what happened was there was a family. And now this family was very poor. And so they would often go into the forest. And they would go to the forest to look for food. And it just so happens that one day they found this berry, this dewberry. But here's the thing, they discovered that this dewberry, deep in the forest, it wasn't like any other dewberry in the world. It had these amazing properties. Number one, it was bigger than any other dewberry out there. Number two, it was sweeter than any other dewberry. Number three, when you ate the dewberry, you felt completely full. It automatically made you full. You weren't hungry anymore. And then lastly, this dewberry provided you all the nutrition you needed. All you had to have was this dewberry. So they discovered this dewberry. So what did they do? Well, they started growing the dewberry deep in the forest as a secret, and they became very wealthy. They became very rich. This family started selling dewberry pies, dewberry jam. They were fabulously rich. Well, it turns out that one day, the family was deep in their hidden dewberry farm in the forest, and they decided to stay longer than they usually do, okay? So what they did is they saw a coyote. They had never seen a coyote before, probably because they had never been there late. Now, they automatically got scared, and they got fearful of the coyote. So what did they do? Well, they shouted insults at the coyote, and they threw rocks at the coyote. The coyote turned around and left, and he never returned. So the family thought they did a good job, and they went back home. They came back to their forest, secret forest dewberry farm the next day, and they were surprised. They were shocked. All their dewberries were gone. Everything was gone, all the way to the roots. It was as if the dewberry never existed. It disappeared. And unfortunately, they spent the rest of their lives poor. And the dewberry was lost forever. So what happened, though? What happened to the dewberry? Well, it turns out that what the family didn't know is that along with the dewberry and along with the coyote, there was another animal that lived in the forest. And that animal was a hare. It was a rabbit, the hare. But here's the thing they didn't know. They didn't know this. Okay, the hare, for thousands of years, these rabbits, they wanted to eat the dewberry so badly. But there was a coyote that lived there. Coyotes always live there. And the coyotes just being there scared the hares. I mean, the coyotes didn't even know the dewberries existed. But the coyotes went to the bathroom, they walked around, they left their smell. And so the hares, they were so scared, they would never go near the berries. And so the dewberries were fine until the day that the family got rid of the coyote. The day that the coyote left, that night, the dewberries went hog wild. They ate like pigs in slop. They made the dewberry extinct. The end. So hopefully this shows a connection in ecosystems, okay? You may not think it. You may not think that a coyote is important. You may like your dewberries, and you may not like coyotes. You may say, let's keep the coyotes, let's keep the dewberries, but let's get rid of the coyotes. But you need all of these things. You need the coyote to have the dewberries, because without the coyote, you have predation by the hare. And that's basically how ecosystems work. And that's why insects are important, because insects are part of the system. Let's see. So let's move on. All right, so the next section is, what is an insect? Let me look at the comments and let's see what's going on here. All right, so Mr. Catfish says, insectoids are out in the galaxy too, I believe. Yeah, I mean, through this class, you're going to see that being an insect is a really cool way to live. There's a lot of benefits to being an insect. That's why there's so many of them. So yes, this is a system that could be applied all over the galaxy. Good observation, Mr. Catfish. Insects are unique for sure, yeah. Painted with copper paint. Interesting. Painted with copper paint. Can you elaborate on that, Mr. Scotty? Thank you for being here, Scotty. Iwak says, a bird hit the window of my house hard, and I went outside to see. It was a dragonfly the size of my hand. I was watching it in awe, struggle. If I only known how much I could sell it for. Wow. That's a pretty big dragonfly. I'll have to look if that's normal. You may have found something new, like a new species. This is a good story. Good moral. Thank you. I appreciate that. Feel free to tell it to whoever you want to. Okay, so what is an insect? Let's back up. I've been talking about insects. I actually forgot what an insect was. Can you believe that? What is an insect? Well, here's some animals. Let's look at these right here. Are any of these insects? Why don't you guys tell me? Are any of these insects in the chat? Let me know. I'll just try to name some of them, but in the chat, tell me if any of these are insects. So in the top, let's see, we have a black widow spider. Those are very venomous, not poisonous. Don't hang out with them. Underneath that, we have actually a tropical animal called a velvet worm, Onychophora. Then we have a mite down there. Then we have a scorpion in the middle. That's also venomous. On the bottom, we have an amphipod. They live in water. Okay, in the top, again, we have a pill bug. We see these in the garden. Underneath that, we have a tardigrade, a microscopic animal that I study. Water bear, moss piglet. And then underneath that, we have a crab, which is delicious, and they have a great personality. Okay, so then Scotty elaborates. He says that the boats, basically, you can paint a boat in copper. Very cool observation. Mr. Catfish says the crab isn't an insect, I think. It's a fish, probably. Okay, well, you're right. It is not a crab, but it's also not a fish. And then Melinda says, yeah, none of them are insects. Well, yeah, Melinda's right. None of these are insects. Although they are related to insects, and I mean, some of them look a lot like insects. But yeah, none of these are insects. Why aren't they insects? Well, let's go forward and find out. Okay, well, here's a good thing. Okay, what are the characteristics of an insect? You know, what do insects have that make them an insect? Okay, well, here's a list. Number one, they have a chitinous exoskeleton. Okay, so exo means on the outside, not on the inside. Now we have an endoskeleton. So our skeleton, I don't know if you've ever seen it, if it's Halloween time. But yeah, we have a skeleton, we have bones, and it's on the inside of our body. And then outside is our flesh. Exoskeleton means that the hard part is on the outside. So all insects have to have a hard skeleton on the outside. They kind of look like robots under the microscope. That's a good way of thinking about it. And what is a chitin? Well, chitin is a tough, protective, semi-transparent polysaccharide forming the principal component of the arthropod skeleton. So not only insects, other organisms like arthropods have a chitin exoskeleton. This can also be found. This protective layered semi-transparent polysaccharide. It's also found in the cell walls of certain fungus. So fungus have it, like mushrooms, certain. And I thought this was interesting. Also, the beak of cephalopods, like a squid. You know, I'm not sure if you know this, but why is everybody scared of squid? Well, it's not just the arms, but they have a giant hard beak. And that beak is made of chitin. Okay, so you have to have this exoskeleton. Okay. You have to have a three-part body. Your body has to be divided into three parts. Now, even though insects come in all varieties, shapes, and sizes, they all actually have these three parts. So here on the right in the green, you can see the head is one part. Then you can see the middle part is the thorax, and then you have an abdomen. So you have to have these three parts. Okay, you have to have 3 pairs of jointed legs, or in other words, you need to have 6 legs. Now, some insects may lose a leg in an accident or be born with a without a leg. It still counts. But yeah, 3. So you see this insect. It's a flying insect. I'm not sure if it's a mosquito. I think it is a mosquito. But you see, it's got 2 legs in the front. That's 1 pair. 2 legs in the middle. That's 2 pairs, and then 2 legs at the bottom. That's 3 pairs. So 3 pairs of jointed legs. The legs are also, they have a joint, just like we have joints in our fingers. So you have to have 6 legs, okay? Now you have to have a compound eye, okay? A compound eye is basically an eye with a lot of different facets or components to it. So there's a picture right there. So their eyes are, they can see a lot. They can see a lot of different angles because they are compound eyes. And lastly, you have to have 1 pair of antennae. Antennae come out of the head. And yeah, they're just long, kind of. I remember I talked one time with a really good entomologist at a university, and I think she was studying the genetics or the evolution of insects. And the way she described early insects, I mean, way millions of years in the past, was that they were nothing but legs. So it's possible that the antenna started off as legs, and then they evolved or adapted to be antenna. The antenna can be really good for sensing information. So we need to have these things. Let's catch up on the comments. Iowak says the top 2 and the Tic Tac thing I call insects. Okay, we're going to go back to that, but they weren't insects. But thank you for guessing, Iowak. I appreciate that. I appreciate your involvement. Mr. Catfish is exoskeleton. They breathe in their abdomen, right? Some of them, yes, some of them do breathe with their abdomen, especially the underwater varieties. We're going to talk about respiration. Iowaks, we're saying they have 8 legs, so they're not insects. Yeah, so we're about to go back to that picture and run this test again. But yeah, she's pointing out that some of those images, they have 8 legs. They don't have 6 legs. Yeah, and so Melinda says that the openings where insects breathe are called spiracles. And then Mr. Catfish says, I heard you can draw one of them by putting their abdomen in the water. Melinda, I heard you could drown one of them. Okay, yes. If they're not adapted for water, then yeah, I believe you could drown one by putting their abdomen in water. Yeah, some of them that live in the water, they actually have a little air bubble that they take, like a little scuba tank. Okay, so let's see. So these are the components. Now let's look at something. Hey, look where we are. We're back here again. Okay, so now we have our little list, and let's go through the list. Okay, let's check all the organisms. Okay, well, let's see. The first thing it says is chitinous exoskeleton. Well, the spider does have one, the black widow on the top. The little pill bug on the top does have that. The scorpion does have that. The mite at the bottom does have that. The amphipod in the middle bottom. And then the water bear, I don't know. I study water bears, but I don't know. We'll get back to that one. And then the onychophoran, I don't know if the velvet worm underneath the spider has it. But that's okay. We have more items. We have more lists. Okay. A 3-part body plan. Okay. Well, that spider, it's kind of hard to tell. That velvet worm underneath the spider does not look like 3 parts. It looks like several parts. That tick, it does not look like 3 parts. I don't see them. That scorpion, it's hard to tell. The water bear, I can't see. These pictures are not that great. Some of them definitely don't have 3 body parts. So it's okay. We have more things on the list. 3 pairs of jointed legs. Okay, here's a big one. 6 legs, basically. Well, the spider has 8 legs. It's out of here. The onychophoran, I lost track of how many legs it has. It's out of here. The mite, it has 8 legs. It's out of here. The crab has, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It looks like 8. It's out of here. The water bear has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's out of here. The pill bug, it's out of here. It's got too many legs. And this amphipod, kind of hard to tell. I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It looks like it might have more, so I think it's out. But also, let's look at some other ones, like the compound eyes. Well, I'll be honest, it's kind of hard to tell. These pictures are kind of small. and the one pair of antenna. Well, let me see. That spider does not seem to have an antenna. That scorpion doesn't seem to have an antenna. That mite doesn't seem to have an antenna. The water bear doesn't seem to have an antenna. The pillbug does seem to have an antenna, but we already ruled it out because if it's got too many legs. The onychophron, or the velvet worm underneath the spider, seems to have two antennae, although I don't think those are actually antennae. But we ruled it out because it's got too many legs. And the crab doesn't really look like it has antenna, but it's got too many legs. And the amphipod doesn't, it looks like it might have more than one pair of antennae. So that's why none of those are insects. All right, so let's see. All right, so yeah, now let's talk about, a great scientist, okay? Please, nobody cancel Carl Linnaeus. He's one of my top 3 scientists to ever live. He honestly came up with something that is so practical to use. What he came up with has given me so much joy. I want to continue using his system. And he did a lot to further the study of biology. So yeah, Carl Linnaeus. Okay, well, here's a picture of him. Definitely a Chad, very handsome guy. There's one of his publications to the left. Okay, now he was born May 23rd. Okay, my birthday's May 21st. I think Melinda's might be May 23rd. I'm not sure, but he was born in 1707. And then he died in January 10th, 1778. Okay, so he lived to be about 71 years old. That's pretty good. Good, I'm happy for him. Okay, so he's also known after his emolument. I think I looked this up. Emolument means you become a lord, like a Scottish lord. Well, anyway, after the ceremony happened in 1781, which is after his death, then he was known as Carl von Linné. All right, now who was he? He was a Swedish botanist, means he studied plants, zoologist, means he studied animals, taxonomist. Well, he discovered he invented taxonomy, so he's the first taxonomist. He's a physician, so he was a doctor. And so he formalized binomial nomenclature. That's the system that he came up with. Binomial nomenclature. How can I explain what he did? What did he discover? What tool did he come up with? Well, before his time, so let's say the 1600s and back, obviously there were animals. There have always been animals on this planet as long as humans have been here. But everybody had a different name for them. All over the world, if you wanted to talk about an animal, you'd be like, that bird, the red bird. You'd be like the thumper, the thumper with the thingies. And it was a lot of confusion. It was really hard to study animals because nobody knew what the hell you were talking about, especially if it was in a different language. And so it was really hard to keep track, to catalog like a Pokemon. I believe Pokemon probably is heavily influenced by Charles Linnaeus. Look, I'll tell you right now, if you love Pokemon, thank Carl Linnaeus, because I believe Pokemon has had a lot to do. Anyway, it's really hard to catalog all these animals, all the plants, all the living things. It's hard to keep track of them. How many are there? How do we study them? Because there was no system for organizing. So then he came in and he said, hey, everybody listen up, back up. I got a plan, okay? I'm going to come up with taxonomy. And this is what he said. He said, look, let's give every animal that's alive a name. Okay, let's have that name have 2 parts to it. So it's one name for every species, and it's actually made of 2 names. That's why binomial nomenclature comes from. Also, let's make all of the names in Latin, in one language, which is dead and no longer changing. So all the animals will be known all over the world by only 2 names, each animal by 2 names. And all the names will be written in this one language, which is called Latin, which is not changing anymore. So it is set in stone. That's what he said. And then he also said, let's go ahead and write a paper for all the insects. Let's keep track of them. So before we give them the name, let's catch one of them. Let's preserve the body of this insect, the bird. Let's write a paper describing it, where it came from, and then let's give it the name. And then the other thing he said was like, he started looking at all the animals and he was like, now I will admit, this is pretty freaky as far as nature goes. It's freaky. He noticed that animals seem to organize themselves in different hierarchical levels, in different levels, I guess. I don't know. It's like, that restaurant, you have your upper management, middle management, and lower management, your workers. Well, it seems that almost all life on Earth, it also fits into these weird little categories. And he observed them and he said, let's give names to all these categories. So yeah, he's known as the father of modern taxonomy. Many of his writings were in Latin. His name is rendered in Latin as Carolus Linnaeus, so they changed his name to Latin as well, I guess in honor. Yeah, this happened in 1761. Yeah, that's when they made his name. And I got all this information from Wikipedia. So basically, he made it so that we could organize and catalog every animal on the planet. And this could be collaborated with every scientist in the world. Because it could be that before him, if you went to Greece, the ancient Rome, they had a really good understanding of the animals. But then that information was not transferable to another country because it was in a different language and maybe they had their own system. So he said, let's just come up with one really good system, which is still used today, which I still use for organizing animals. This is important because insects, they follow Linnaean taxonomy, and that's why we're going to talk about them. Let's see. So then Melinda says, yeah, I thought your birthday was May 23rd, Melinda. My birthday is May 23rd. I can't believe I didn't know Linnaeus, and I share a birthday. Yeah. May 19, too old to put that year. Okay, Scotty. Melissa says, I'll be able to get my 10-year-old son to learn about Linnaeus when I tell him how Pokemon is influenced by him. I really believe that the Pokemon is influenced by the Linnaean system of nomenclature. It was the 50s, Melinda. My youngest granddaughter is 15. Mr. Catfish is May 29th. Hey, May party. Got the May crew here. JFK's birthday. Oh, so JFK was born in May 29th. Wow, a lot of famous people were born in May. All right, let's look at his system. We're talking about his system. I keep pumping it up. I love Linnaeus. He's a great guy. He gives me so much joy and discovery. Let's look at his system a little bit closer. Okay, so yeah, this next section is called Linnaean taxonomy, his system, and binomial nomenclature. Okay. So remember I told you that the system is hierarchical. Okay, so it's kind of like Russian nesting dolls. You have one big doll or one big taxonomic group, and inside it fits another group. And inside of that fits another and another and another. Okay, so if you look at the left here, the largest group is life. So basically all of life is one big group, right? Okay, but then there's different types of domains. Then there's different types of kingdoms, different types of phylums, classes, orders, families, genus or genera, and then species. Okay. These are the hierarchical levels, okay? So these are categories, okay? They're categories of hierarchical levels. Let me give you an example. Here's a beetle that I study a lot, okay? It's a water beetle. It's all over Texas. They live in streams. They're so easy to identify because they have a coppery kind of sheen, a metallic sheen on top of them. They're very big. They live on the surface of streams mainly. I like them. They have a discharge. They produce a milky discharge from their abdomen that's toxic to fish, but it smells kind of fruity. It's so yeah. Anyway, let's look at its. I don't know. Let's start at the bottom, I guess. Okay. So first of all, a scientist discovered this species. You know what? I think it might be Linnaeus. I'm not 100% sure, but I think our boy Carlos Linnaeus, he might have been the one in the 1700s that named this species. I'm not sure, but I think so. But anyway, let's just say it was him. Here's the thing: since he was the first guy he's the first guy to come up with the system. He was able to, take advantage of it. So this guy named so many animals, all kinds of animals. But I think he might have named this beetle. Anyway, so its species name is Dinutus ciliatus. So that's the two-part name it has. Okay, just like humans, humans have. Scotty says that the word of the day is nomenclature. Yeah, that is a good one. So humans have a name called Homo sapiens as well. Okay, So at the very bottom of this nomenclature hierarchy, the species name is Dinudis ciliatus. Now, the genus name, it's another group that it fits into, is Dinudes. If you look, Dinudes is actually the first part of the species name. That's the way it always is, okay? So the first part of the species name is actually the genera or genus. So humans are Homo sapiens as a species, but our genera or our genus is Homo. And there's other organisms that are in Homo. So we're categorized in the same group as gorillas and chimpanzees. They're also Homo. But if you get closer down to species, then we're Homo sapiens. There were early humans called Homo erectus, which we think are extinct now. But you see, they have the same genus Homo, but they have the second part, or the species epithet, is erectus, and ours is Homo sapiens. Anyway, you move up a level and you have a family, which is Gyrinnidae. Now, Gyrinnidae, the family is interesting. In this case, the family is, all these beetles basically look the same. They have the same body plan, but they vary differently in sizes. But they all have the same body plan, so they're in a family. Okay, then you go up one level and you have the order, which in this case is Coleoptera. Coleoptera includes all the beetles. All the beetles. Beetles are one of the most diverse animals in the world. So you have your ladybugs, you have your rhinoceros beetles, and you have these whirligig beetles. So you see these whirligig beetles, which are called Dinudis ciliatus, they fit into this larger group called an order, and their order name is Coleoptera. And Coleoptera includes all of the beetles. All beetles share similar characteristics. And then if you go up another group, you have the class, which is Insecta. So now this is where we're studying in the class. We're studying insects, basically. So class is one big hierarchical level. All insects fit into this one level. So you have your mosquitoes, you have your dragonflies, and you have your beetles, and you have your whirligig beetles. Underneath that, you have your Coleoptera, which is only your beetles. Then you have your Gyrinnidae, which is only this type of water beetle. Then you have your genus, which is an even smaller group of water beetles that are similar in size. And then you have your species, which is this beetle. And it is its own species because it has a size, a shape, and a coppery feel. Okay. If you go up another level, you have the phylum, which is Arthropoda. Arthropoda, it's even bigger now. Arthropoda includes your spiders, your shrimp. A lot of other animals are in Arthropoda, and insects are in there, and this beetle's in there. And then you have another group, which is Animalia. Animalia is a bigger group. It includes birds, it includes fish, and it includes insects. And then you have a bigger level, which is the eukaryotes. All right, so this is important. Now let's study this a little bit closer into detail. So let's see. Let's catch up on comments. Okay, yeah. So Melinda said a good way to memorize these systems. This will be on a test, by the way. Is King Philip came over for spaghetti. So the K stands for kingdom, and then Philip is phylum, came is class, over is order, for is family, good is genus, spaghetti is species. I have another one that's slightly different. And then let's see. Mr. Catfish talking about JFK says he was killed over aliens, and he's being contacted by aliens. So a lot of connections being made here. Well, I hope it's good contact, Mr. Catfish. Melinda says, yes, nomenclature is the word of the day, and we're always learning good words here. Maybe you should run for office. Why not, Mr. Catfish? Wasn't JFK going to go public about aliens, that was the reason for his assassination? Or is it something different? That is a rumor. That is a rumor that's spreading around. I haven't seen any evidence to back it up, but I have heard that rumor. Mr. Catfish was born in 86. So you're younger than me. I was born in 83. Melinda was born in 72. My oldest brother was born in 69, said Mr. Catfish. Scotty says it's good for the mind, the vocabulary. Melinda talking to Mr. Catfish says it's something I've heard, along with other reasons, as far as the JFK assassination. Mr. Catfish's mother was born in 44. Mr. Catfish says, yeah, right. I ain't running for BS. Well, that's your choice, Mr. Catfish. Let's take a closer look at this taxonomy. Okay, so yeah, what we're going to do now is we're going to look at some of the systems. Now we're going to start from the top and work our way down to this one little beetle, or an insect, basically, that I studied. Okay, so yeah, what I have there is I put on the top another way of memorizing these different hierarchical categories is Dear King Philip came over for good soup, or you can say good spaghetti, whatever you want. Okay, so insects are in the domain, this highest level domain of eukaryotes. Okay, so we're gonna see what is a eukaryote. So I'm just gonna go ahead and read this directly from, where is this from? The link is there if you want it. This is from dictionary.com. Okay, so eukaryotes are any organism in the domain eukaryota having as its fundamental structure unit a cell type that consists of specialized organelles in cytoplasm, a membrane-bound nucleus enclosing genetic material contained into chromosomes, an elaborate system of division by mitosis or meiosis. These are characteristics of all life forms except bacteria and other primitive microorganisms. Okay, so in order to be in this group of eukaryote, you have to have these qualities. You have to have cells. You have to be made of cells, basically. And then that cell that you're made of, or multiple cells, they have to contain specialized organelles. So a cell is probably the smallest unit of life. You're made of billions or trillions of living cells, but each of those cells is alive. It has its own life. It uses energy. It produces waste, just like any animal. You're made of lots of tiny animals in a way called cells, but inside of them, just like you have organs, the cells have organelles, and they live, or they're suspended in cytoplasm, and they have a nucleus also in the cell that has a membrane around it, and inside of that nucleus there's genetic material organized into chromosomes. This is your DNA, and these cells also divide with an elaborate system called mitosis or meiosis. So that's the broadest level. So a lot of life goes into this level. All right, so then let's move down one level. Now let's go down to the kingdom of Animalia. Okay, so this is now from Wikipedia. So what makes you an animal? Okay, so animals have to be multicellular. So they have to have a lot of these cells, not just one. Like I said, you and I and insects are made of trillions of little cells. They have to be eukaryotic, which we just described. And then with few exceptions, it says here that these animals must consume organic material. So a lot of them take in organic material like the flesh of other animals. They breathe oxygen. They're able to move around. They can reproduce sexually with a mate. They go through an ontogenetic or developmental stage. And in this developmental stage, your body consists of a hollow sphere of cells, the blastula, during embryonic development. And then give some facts about animals. Basically, animals. There's over 1.5 million types of living animals that have been described. That's important. It says described. So I suspect that there's millions of other animals on this planet that have not yet been described. So they're out there living their life, and I would like to discover some of them. It says here that about 1 million of the 1.5 million animals are insects. So as you can see, we're studying a lot of the life on Earth by taking this class. So yeah, it says it's been estimated that there are over 7 million animal species in total. So we've discovered 1.5 approximately. So a fraction of the potential 7 million animal species. And it says here that they range anywhere from a length to 8.5 micrometers, maybe like a water bear, to 110 feet or 33.6 meters. That's probably the blue whale. They have complex interactions with each other and their environments. That's what I was talking about, ecosystems. They form intricate food webs. That's what we were talking about as well. And the scientific study of animals is known as zoology. So you see that actually plants are not animals, because the study of plants would be botany, not zoology. Okay, let's go down one more level. And now let's look at the arthropods or arthropoda. Okay, once again at dictionary.com, what makes an arthropod? All right, arthropods are any invertebrates, or meaning you don't have any bones, you have an exoskeleton. They have a segmented body, so their body has different segments. So now we could see that I think almost all those animals, or I think all of them we saw in that first slide that said, what is an insect, are actually arthropods. They have a segmented body. They have jointed little limbs, so their arms or legs are jointed. They usually have this chitinous shell, and it undergoes moltings. Moltings is how you get rid of your old shell and you get a new one and you grow bigger. And arthropods do include insects, spiders, and other arachnids, crustaceans, and myriapods. All right, let's see. So now, the group underneath arthropods are now insects. Okay, so this whole class is about insects, and the group that they're in is called Insecta. So this class is about the class Insecta, basically, the group of animals called insects. So once again, what do you have to be an insect? Well, you have to have this chitinous exoskeleton, 3-part body plan, 3 pairs of jointed legs, compound eyes, and 1 pair of antennae, which these organisms have. And I think that's it for today. That kind of covers all the basics. It was about 1 hour, so yeah, it went well. So yeah, there's a lot of material here to go over. If you want to test yourself, a lot of this material will be on the test. If you want to test yourself, let's see. Let's see. Mr. Catfish had to go. Goodbye, Mr. Catfish. Melinda says it's great for the mind, learning new words. I have to also forget the ones I learned. Yeah, you do have to practice a lot. Have a great night. I'm sorry, it was Scotty who had to leave. Yeah. And then Iowok says, nice. It reminded me of science class. Well, cool. All right, well, that's it, class. Like I said, that's about it. It's been an hour. So this material this is just my presentation. I haven't used any of the textbook, really. This is just stuff that I had in my mind. I thought it would be a good overview. So I will email the textbook, Melinda, and to anybody else. We haven't actually started working on the textbook. But the next class will be on next Tuesday. And then the next show will be on Thursday. I'll be doing a gaming live stream. And then on Friday, we will be talking about the experimental evidence for parapsychological behavior, like telepathy, clairvoyance, and premonitions. Mr. Catfish says, good class. Thank you. Well, thank you, guys. You were a very good class. Thank you for anybody watching it in the future. As always, if you have any comments, please put them in the comment section. Please like the video. I will respond to all the comments. If you don't like the class, let me know. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't mind being criticized. Yeah, make sure to like it. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to share it to anybody. Let's try to grow the channel. It's always more fun when there's more people in the party. Mr. Catfish says, I'll be reviewing. And Melinda says, awesome class. Thank you. Look forward to the next one. Thank you, Melinda. That means a lot coming from you. Melinda is a PhD scientist, a biologist. Iowok says, peace. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Peace to all of you. Have fun. And thanks for being here. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.